Page 105, Halftime Band. This is the first lesson in Unit 10. As usual, this is a good time. If you're not really comfortable with everything, go back and review everything before going on. In this lesson, they're introducing the black keys, because we've only used white keys so far. Hopefully by now you know the names of the keys on the keyboard. If you have stickers on your keyboard, you should have removed them a long time ago as far as I'm concerned. You need to be able to just look and know what they are instantly. So if you haven't, I encourage you to take the stickers off your keyboard, because now we're going to start using the black keys. Now you use the black keys to tell you what the white keys are because of the groups of 2 and 3. Because you can find which white key is what based on where it is in a group of 2 and 3 black keys. Well, we find the name of the black keys by which white key we're on. It's like a circle. At the top of page 104, they introduce a thing called a half step. A half step is the shortest distance between any two notes we can have in our harmonic system that we use. On a piano, a half step is the next key, white or black. We're using all the keys now, white and black both. So when I say next key, I'm not talking about here to here. I'm talking about here to here. That's a half step. So all of these are half steps. That's a half step because there's no key in between. That's half step. And while I'm here, I just want to tell you a whole step is 2 half steps put together. It has 1 key in between. So a whole step would be like here, because a half step and a half step, that's a whole step because there's 1 key in between. So it's a whole step. Whole step, and that's a half step because there's no key in between. But if I go here, that's a whole step because there's 1 key in between. Half step is a whole step. We'll get the whole steps later. Since I talked half steps, I talk whole steps too. There's nothing bigger than that. So we're just half steps and whole steps, and it's important we understand that because we use that to build stuff, to understand more stuff. So half steps and whole steps are important to understand. They're like the building blocks of what's going on. Now the sharp sign. You see an example, it's 2 lines going down, 2 lines going across. In my day, we would call it a pound sign or a number sign, something like that. Today's generation would probably call it a hashtag. However, keep in mind that technically speaking, all of those things I just mentioned are a little bit different. They're just a little bit different. But the point is there's 2 lines going down and there's 2 lines going across, and that's close enough. It's a sharp. A sharp means you raise the note, whatever it is, up a half step. Sharps go up. So if I have a C and I want a C sharp here. So that note is a C sharp. D, D sharp. F, F sharp. A sharp. They all work the same way. E, E sharp. And you say, oh, back up. That's an F. Well, I hope you're sitting down because every key on the piano has multiple names. So yes, that is an F, but it is also an E sharp. It has to do with music theory and building chords and getting everything just right mathematically and harmonically. Sometimes we have to have an E sharp or a B sharp. It's here. Okay, now the way the piano is tuned, the sharp is halfway in between. So I have a C and a D, and the C sharp is halfway in between them. The way the pianos are tuned. Technically speaking, a sharp is actually a little higher than halfway. Just a little bit. We can't do that on these. We just have to tune them in the middle, and that's close enough. So that's what we do. But if you have an instrument that doesn't, where they can finger the notes exactly like a violin, or a cello or something, they'll finger their sharps just a hair higher. They won't finger them in the middle with 2 notes. It'll be just a little bit. On page 104, then in the bottom half of the page, they give some notes here where you're going to all the notes between C and C. Okay. And they give the fingering. There's multiple ways of fingering this. The one they give is kind of the standard. It's the one you go to first. If you have to figure out fingering in a piece, you get a passage like this. You have to figure out the fingering. This is the fingering you try first. And then you may have to change it based on what came before or what goes on after it. Yeah. So what it really is the third finger is going to play all the black keys. If I could hit them. And either 1 or 2 is going to play the white keys. One plays them unless there's 2 white keys together, in which case you got to have 2 help out, because the third finger is reserved for the black keys. So it's just here, here, and you keep going. There's no real starting place and ending place on a passage like this. It's whatever the music needs, because you're using all the notes. Then they give the same thing for the left hand. What's the same fingering? Third finger's going to do the black keys, and either thumb or second finger do the. I'll let you do that. I don't have a scale on this kind of thing because you'll get it in the music. I have not really found a need too much for a scale on it. Doesn't hurt to play. You play the hands together if you want. You really don't need music for this. You're just playing all the notes. Here, these are different. These are different. Whatever. Have fun with it. Now, at the bottom of page 104, they give a rule that it carries through the measure but not past the bar line. Okay. What I say is the sharp applies from the point where it's shown in the measure to the rest of the measure, but only that measure and only that staff. So take a look here in page 105. It's measure 6. Both hands have a C, and then both hands have a C sharp. See the sharp in front of the C? That tells you to play up a half step here. The sharp sign has to be in both staffs because it only applies to this one staff at a time. Every staff has to have its own symbols. And in the next beat that shows a quarter rest, well, let's pretend it showed another C instead, 2 C's there. In that case, it would also be a C sharp. They wouldn't need another sharp sign because this sharp sign applies for the rest of the measure. But in the next measure, if they wanted a sharp sign or they wanted to C sharp, they would have to put in another C sharp sign. And you'll notice in measure 7, there's C's there, here, but there's no sharp sign there. So it's a natural because the sharp sign in measure 6 only applied to measure 6, not measure 7. Now there's another part of the rule that people don't agree on, and I think it kind of depends on what instrument you play. Different instruments seem to approach this different, because I had a violin teacher who absolutely told me I was nuts, sort of, because she disagreed totally. Some people, like piano players, we take that sharp sign to be that particular note. If there were another, let's go back to our example on measure 6. If there were another C in that measure somewhere else, higher up or lower, a C maybe up here or some other C, we need a sharp sign in front of that note also. But a violin player, someone like that, informed me that no, once that that sharp sign is there, it applies to all C's. It doesn't matter where they are. And we went back and forth a little bit on that one. Boy, she was adamant about it. And I thought, all right, whatever. And then I found later in talking to people in groups about this, that there's big disagreement on it. Absolutely big disagreement on whether the sharp sign applies only to that note or does it apply to all notes of that note name. And that's the difference. You can believe whatever you want, and let everybody else believe what they want, but in piano music, you're going to need to see that sign in front of each octave where it appears. So from now on, we're going to be using sharps. Who knows what they're going to be? They could be any sharp. Doesn't matter, we'll just whatever the music says. Let's look at this band and see what's going on. It's 1 page long, treble bass clef, 4/4 time signature, quarter notes, quarter rests, half notes, and we got sharp signs to deal with. Now, one hand at a time. Right hand, you're starting here on G. That puts your hand here. Even though there's a sharp sign coming, the hand position is still here. And what we do is we use the same finger for the black key as we would use for the white key. So in the second measure, when I get to the C sharp, since fourth finger's on the C, I'm going to use fourth finger on the C sharp. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's the first thing you go for if you can. So here it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, like so. Now, if there were not a rest between that and the C sharp, if there were not a rest, I'd have to use some other finger. I don't want to use the same finger twice. Like that. Because there's a rest, I got time to move up there. Measure 9, you get a G and a B together, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And that's a C, G and a C there. That's about it on the right hand. Left hand, your G is down here. That puts you here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And again, since second finger's on the C, I'm going to use second finger on the C sharp. Okay. Last line, measure 13. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that last C is also a C sharp. Remember, the sharp sign applies for the rest of the measure. So they got 2 C naturals and 2 C sharps. And the last note at the bottom has an 8V8 under it. You just go down here. If you have the note. If you have a short keyboard, play the lowest G you have. Now they have you using a beginner's fingering because you're a beginner. Now we keep it a nice, neat 5-finger position as much as we can. Now that we're introducing black keys, that's not so easy because things get complicated. So I want to show you a little more advanced fingering. You're going to need to know it anyway. This will start now. They'll get around to it eventually. But on measure 14 with this, I don't want to use second finger for all of those. I don't like that. If there were a rest there, like there's been, then we got time. But there's no rest here. It's just note after note. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to change hand positions. I'm going to go here from here to here. I'm going to change hand positions. And one of the ways we do that, there's many ways to do it. One way we do that is we take advantage of repeated notes to change hand positions. Because on a repeated note, you got to lift the note up anyway to play it again. You can't connect it to itself. You have to lift up. Well, we take advantage of that to change fingers then. So in measure 14, it's 2 and then a 3. I just changed hand positions. We do this a lot in piano. This is, we'll try it out here. But this way, now I'm in position for the C sharp. And then thumb. And when I do that, I've come back down. So I moved up for a little bit and then I come back down. So it's a here. Try that out and see what you think. Put the hands together. Well, at the beginning, they're playing the same notes or same rhythm. Different fingers sometimes, but that's okay. Let's go down to measure 9. Here it's 1, 2. Okay, and then measure 13. The last line is. Rest. Basically the piece. So you go through and get it worked out and go back through slowly and carefully and get rid of any hesitations. And really, even with this, you want to get to where you can do that without looking at the keyboard eventually. You'll have to look at the end when you go down here. That's fine, you can look there. But try to do the rest of this without looking at the keyboard. And then I add the articulation. There isn't a whole lot. You get a few slurs and accents just to accent. Just a little extra. on measure, what, 7? They're slurred. And then we get accents on measure 9. This accent makes it a little louder is all it does. Now, on the last 2 measures, with the accents, all the notes are accented. One of the ways of interpreting that, because we need to start talking about interpreting the music, that is taking it beyond what's printed and putting some feeling into it. Well, one of the things we do with notes that are note after note that are accented like this is we can separate the notes just a little bit. It kind of helps to bring out the accent. So instead of just playing them loud, we separate them just a hair. It's a way of interpreting it. Not everybody does that, and I don't do it all the time, but I do it most of the time. You have to try different things out. You experiment. Do I like that sound? Do I not like that sound? Yeah. So I'm going to separate these in the last 2 measures just a hair. Yeah, just a hair. Then the dynamics. Well, this is interesting. I think you can pretty much just play both hands the same. It's like multiple instruments all playing the melody together. And MF is mezzo forte or sort of loud here. That makes the accented note loud. You just take a... And then you get down to measure 9, they go up to loud. For piano, an accent just takes it up a notch. So that means those accented notes are all going to be very loud notes. So I don't know that I need accents on loud. I mean, they're already loud. Just play a little louder than you were at the beginning. And don't connect these. Don't go. Don't connect this and this. You can have a little bit of separation because you have note after note accented. Just and you finish it loud, kind of like a pep band. Halftime at a ball game, they're doing their thing. Speed with pep. Okay, whatever you think that is. It's got to be accurate, so don't go faster than that. Not too much pep. Just one way of playing it. You don't have to play it that fast. You don't have to experiment. Get into it. Start trying to feel something with this music. Get beyond the notes. So a lot of people, when they go through these books, they'll say, okay, I got the notes and the rhythms and all, let's go on. And they're missing out on most of what music is actually about when they do that. It's the feeling. It's turning it into a message. It's going beyond the printed page. Add something. Feel it. It's hard to describe. How do you describe a feeling? You know, just get into it. Have fun with this. This is not something you would play to put somebody to sleep. Let's play it together very slowly and check the notes and rhythms. I'm not going to do the dynamics. I'll try and do the accents, but I'm not going to play it really loud. I'll give us 4 counts. This is just to check, make sure you have the right notes and the correct rhythms. Or the correct notes and the right rhythms, or I don't know. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, 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 2, 4. rest, rest.